Hello, my name is Robbie Fitzwater. I own and operate Marketing Rhythm. We help e-commerce businesses with retention marketing. So one of the questions we get asked all the time is, hey, how many emails should I send? And I know this is a touchy subject for a lot of marketers because we don't want to burn out our audiences. We think burning out an audience, it's going to happen super fast because everybody sees every one of our emails. This isn't always the case. Again, we want to always be aware of how many emails we're sending, but depending on the context and the content we're going to be sending, we can either send more or less emails and still have fun. Basically, again, if you're sending too many emails, you're going to be burning out your audience. Where I always equate that to basically like, hey, let's take our office chair or let's take our office furniture, let's go out back and set it on fire. Because that's a business asset that we're underutilizing and we're kind of burning out and ruining if we burn out our audience because they're going to disengage and unsubscribe. On the other side of the spectrum is, hey, we're not sending enough emails. We're not leveraging our audience the way we need to be, and we're not generating the revenue we need to be generating. So where's the gap here? So this is going to come down to a few different variables that we really start to think about in terms of, hey, how frequently should I send? What should I send? And then like basically how to find that sweet spot. So every different business is going to have to go through this in their process, but we want to walk you through kind of like what to think about and then how to start bringing that to life in a more consistent basis. So let's dive in. Basically, this is going to come down to a few different areas that we want to think about for, again, how we think about our email marketing. We want to think about our audience, our content, the industry we're in, the bandwidth we have, the context that we're going to be sending those emails within, and then how trained is our audience to receive frequent emails. So diving into each one of those, like let's unpack that. So from the perspective of, hey, my audience, how many segments do I serve? How different are those segments? And then what data do we have and how can we leverage that to communicate with them in a valuable way? So one of the examples I always think about here is we have one client who is a children's clothing brand. They have clients who are parents, grandparents, and gift givers. So those three segments make up the majority of their audience. Those different segments are going to need to receive messaging at different times. Parents may be, again, evergreen. They may be receiving emails consistently during the year, and they're going to be opening them and engaging with them because they need that information. Grandparents, maybe less frequently, maybe once a month. They may not need as much information, but you better believe around the holidays when they want to get their grandchild in something cute, they want to see it. And then gift givers, this may be 2 to 3 times a year where they're going to be active and engaged. So we don't need to send to each one of those groups the same, where we want to make sure that we send and engage the parents who are kind of our evergreen audience versus our, again, more seasonal or, again, kind of sales peak audiences. Those are going to help inform us of understanding, hey, who's our audiences, how engaged, how active should they be, and then how do we communicate with them differently? So this comes down to a strategy perspective. How well can we collect and leverage our first party data to make sure that we're going to connect the right message with the right person at ideally the right time? And then the other piece of this is, where does that audience spend their time? So if we know, hey, our audience is out of town every single weekend, like again, we have an equestrian client who they have shows on the weekends. If they're at horse shows, they're probably not going to be reading their email consistently during the day on a Saturday. So send on the weekends, send early in the week. Those are times where they're going to be active and engaged, not active in doing something else. And that's where understanding the context of their life really helps, so we can understand what they're doing, where they're spending their time, and how busy or less busy they are. So we want to find them at the right time for that audience. So again, connecting the dots there. The next piece we always want to be thinking about is, hey, what content do we have available and how we're going to use that? We always think about this in terms of like two different kinds of sends. So we have our promotional sends and then we have our content sends. Both of those are going to really be necessary and needed for any business. We really love the content sends, especially in the e-commerce space. We don't think everybody does content sends really well, so we like to use those very frequently. Basically, that's going to be sending content that's going to be adding value beyond the transaction for your audience, ideally engaging them in a way that they're going to be, again, building a certain level of trust and authority with you. And then the more trust and credibility you build over time, the more likely you are to, again, connect with them longer term, and that lifetime value gets really easily maximized there. The other side is those promotional sends. Those promotional sends are like, again, sale events, product releases, product rollouts, early access. that's again more transaction focused, but finding a balance of both of those, again, either or, really helps us to really find a great way to communicate with those audiences, keep them engaged, but also driving a business outcome. When we do one or the other, only promotional sends, we're going to be a used car lot. People are going to disengage and people are going to get burnt out really fast. If all we do is content sends, then we're basically trying to be a media company. And if we're not, again, generating revenue through subscriptions, like it's going to be hard for us to continue that. But also the content sends really do play a nice role in when somebody does need to make a decision. We have our top of mind preference available because we've been helping them, again, make decisions through the course of that customer lifecycle, and that we really are their preferred provider after a certain point. So finding the balance of each of those is really helpful. And then making sure that you have enough good content to send that's going to be giving you a reason to reach out to your audience. Again, you don't want to just be sending an email for the sake of sending an email. You want to be really strategic in the way you're sending those specifically to different groups, different audiences, and different cohorts. The next thing we're going to be thinking about is what industry are we in? So depending on what industry we're in, is this B2B, is this B2C? B2B may not be as high frequency. B2C may be a little bit more acclimated to high frequency. Is this again, a business services business company or a women's cosmetics business? Both of those brands are going to be sending very different cadence of emails, but both of them are going to be, again, a little bit more normalized within that given industry. So thinking about, hey, B2C versus B2B, and where both of those are honestly in some ways merging more consistently, where B2C is kind of informing B2B, but understanding, hey, even within that context, am I in a vertical that has bandwidth to send more? So am I again, business services, which would be on the lowest end of the realm of again, 2 cents a month to 3 cents a month, or am I on the side of like a political campaign? They are a little bit wild. It seems like the wild, wild west in politics, but they'll send like 20 to 100 emails a month and not think twice about it. Those are going to be a little bit extreme for a lot of brands. Most brands can't pull that off, but some do. So those are where, again, understanding the context of your environment, understanding the context of what you're going to be, how frequently you're going to be sending, and how normal is that for the industry may help to kind of help inform you and guide you. Also, again, you may not be sending every single person every one of those emails, so make sure you're segmenting your audience, going back to that tip number one of audience. So the next piece we like to think about is, hey, how much bandwidth does your team have? Is this going to stretch everybody so thin that you can't do anything else? And if so, like maybe you need to pull back a little bit. So again, basing this off of how well your team can execute all of it is going to be really important. So you don't want to be stretching your team too thin early, and you want to make sure that you're leveraging the resources you have, because the incremental value of one extra send may not be worth the labor intensive, again, work that goes into it. So make sure you're, again, not stretching your bandwidth too thin. The next piece is probably one of the most important, and we always talk about like the difference between content. Everybody always jokes like content is king, but context, like she's the queen and she really kind of wears the pants in the relationship, where context meets content is really important. The context of the email is going to be super, super important for how likely it is to get opened and how valuable it's going to be seen as for the end user. So if I send an email that's super highly contextual, relevant, and individualized to me, to, again, one person, that's going to be a lot more valuable to that person than a broad campaign send. So we have our automated sends that are going to be super relevant specifically for them based on an action or behavior that they showed. And that's going to be only to them and nobody else. And that's what's really unique about this side of the house is basically if we send a really targeted segmented email, we can send basically as many automated emails as we want to without having to worry about burning out our audience. Again, within reason, but we're not going to burn out our audience as easily because those are so specifically tailored to me. Like if they know, like we talked about an equestrian client, like if they know my horse's name, my horse's birthday, and they can email me on my horse's birthday, like that's a super win because like they know me, they see my horse. Like I love that. And that's a really distinguishing factor versus like a broad campaign send. Granted, we want to be tailoring those broad campaign sends to a specific audience, so they're going to be valuable and helpful. But for automated emails, we can probably send up to 5 a day if we really needed to. Campaign emails, we may want to, again, throttle back a little bit. Maybe 2 would be the max we typically want to send, unless it's a holiday, in which case, like the context of this goes way out the window because, again, we have to expect context of how busy somebody is or how full their inbox is. We're sending like 3 emails a day on Black Friday, Cyber Monday because we know that everybody's inbox is going to be completely flooded with promotional emails. So we have to kind of expect people to miss them. So those are going to be variables that we want to be thinking about all the time. And again, the context of how frequently you're sending is also going to be important. So content is king, context, she's a queen, and she wears the pants. So we'll go from there. And then the last piece we always like to think about is how trained is your audience to receive consistent emails? Basically, the level of their training is going to be how frequently are you sending, how acclimated are they to receiving emails on a regular basis. So if you go from 0 to 20 emails in a month, that's going to seem a little bit jarring. If you go from 0 to 5 emails in a month, that may be a more consistent trajectory. Getting into a rhythm where you can send one hub send a week is going to be a good position to get into early and then kind of building it from there. Also, if you're onboarding them through an automation, that may be a time where you can send a little bit more frequently because they are kind of, again, just joined a list, just adding value through those sends, but don't make those too salesy. Make sure that you have some level of value added content added to those onboarding automation. And you may also exclude them from campaign sends if they're receiving something that's more tailored and specific. So all of those variables, things you want to be thinking about. The kind of the rule of thumb we like to think about is, hey, like let's shoot for 1 to 2 emails a week early. And let's go for 1 to 2 emails a week. And once we can get into kind of a hub strategy, that's going to open the door for more things. So like we talked about in our Hygiene Hub and Hero video a little while back, basically we want to be thinking about how do we, again, create a piece of hub content that are replicable and easy to do on a frequent basis so we can get into a rhythm of sending once a week. And this behind me is kind of how we like to start doing that. So say this was a given month, like this is the 1st and this is the 31st. We may have one hub send a week or one hub send a week for a given time. And we like doing these on typically a Tuesday or Thursday. Basically, those are the days that on Mondays, everybody's inbox is completely full from the weekend and it can kind of get lost. On Fridays, people travel, it's easy to get missed. So Tuesdays or Thursdays are generally easy days for us to kind of like lean on because those days are pretty, again, open and a lot of people have opportunity. So if we get a consistent hub send every week, it's going to make that easy to replicate, more consistent. Later on, again, once we can get into a good rhythm of having like one a week, we may be able to add an extra. So say like an extra piece of content comes through on a Tuesday. So we've gone from Thursday and then Tuesday. And we may be able to even add 2 of those in a month. So we've gone from 4 campaign sends to 6. That's a pretty big jump, but again, it's scalable, it's manageable, and it's not burning out our audience or not stretching us thin for resources. The next thing we can do is think about, hey, how does this fit into our broad marketing calendar? If this is going to fit into our broad marketing calendar, how do we want to make sure that we have our promotional sends and, again, communication all lined up? So say we have a promotional event on this weekend. We may send, if this is a Thursday, we may send a teaser on a Tuesday, a follow-up on a Saturday, and a last chance on a Sunday. So that 1 week, we go from 1 email send to 4 really fast, but this all fits within our again, kind of our standard operating procedure. And then again, we get back into content after that promotional event. We may even send a piece of content here as a Trojan horse, but that gives us a chance to build up those sends pretty fast without kind of overwhelming our audience. And then when we think about that Hygiene Hub and Hero model, we're not going to be sending hero content all the time, but we can incorporate some of that hygiene content ever so often so we get the momentum hopefully built in that direction. And we're not, again, stretching our team thin or like stretching our resources. So in here, we've gone from 4 email sends a month to 3, 7, to 9 really fast. And you can see how this builds up momentum over time. We don't want to have too many promotional events during the week, during a month, but hey, if we have 1 every month or 1 every 6 weeks, like that's totally fine. Don't do them too often, especially in the e-commerce space. Like you'll burn out your audience. When everything's on sale, nothing is on sale. But you can see how this process goes where we really work to build that system. but we're also training our audience to expect those in those given days. So ideally, we want to be adding value, so much value when we do send, that we're going to be, again, getting those people on board. And if for whatever reason we miss to send, they're going to miss us. And if they would like miss our content when we're gone, like that's when we really won in terms of how we're positioning our content. And that's in value being added to our audience. So those are really all things we want to be thinking about. So other best practices we always think about, okay, how do we connect the email cadence with the life cycle stage of our customer, thinking about where they're at in that customer life cycle. We may be able to, again, have a few more email sends early, but then we may want to throttle that back over time. We may want to adjust our cadence based on our broader marketing goals, like I talked about. Again, we want to increase the cadence through like a promotional event. That's totally necessary, but we want to make sure we're having consistent sends ahead of time so we can tee ourselves up for success there. We also want to give subscribers a chance to choose how many they receive. So do they want to receive once a month, once a week? Let them, again, communicate that in the preferences page, give them the option of adjusting their preferences anywhere they need to, and that's going to help to kind of like find that right sweet spot. Also, the more personalized, the more contextual, the better here. So again, right person with the right message at the right time. That's, again, kind of your goal for so much of this. So you're lining up the personalization, the context, and how well you're going to be sending. And then also, how well are you going to be doing this consistently? So that consistency is really important. You want to have a relationship of consistency over intensity here, where you want to be sending consistently during the year, as opposed to like a few times in a few small windows. Like if you only receive emails from somebody during like the Black Friday run up, like that's not a really good friend. But if you receive emails the whole year, like that's a person you probably want to be around more consistently, or at least like give some time and attention to. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but that's where you want to be thinking. If you kind of like start to verge on the extreme of this side of things, like how to know you're sending too many emails, is when you start to see a decreased open rate on a very consistent basis. Now, this is a little bit tricky sometimes with the iOS updates, but if you see, again, your open rate decrease really fast, then you know you may have like kind of a red flag, and that also may be deliverability issue you're running into. So the more consistently you send without a high level of engagement, the less deliverable, like the less valuable of a sender you're going to be seen in the hands of Gmail, Yahoo, and any email service provider. So again, you want to make sure you're having a clean sender reputation. Also, if you see a high unsubscribe rate, then yeah, that could be impacting your audience. Also, a high number of spam complaints, like that's, again, also very much a red flag. Decreasing click-through rate. So if your click-through rate starts to dwindle, you may be, again, needing to zig while you've only been zagging, and change up that cadence, or change up those value propositions around your emails. If you send the same thing over and over, you don't have that used car lot mentality. And then you also can see directly sometimes, like you'll get negative feedback from subscribers. Your customer service team may start to receive more emails. That's when you know, hey, red flag, like we should probably pull it back a little bit, or at least like make sure our audiences are segmented a little bit better. But basically, those are all going to be signs your audience is overwhelmed and not engaging or not finding your content valuable anymore. So this is where you want to train them, inform them, and make sure that those messages are as highly contextual as possible, because again, this is a marathon, not a sprint. If you're there during the course of the year, and again, you're adding value consistently, you may not have somebody convert 4 times in the first year, but if you can have somebody convert once every year, like that lifetime value goes really high over time. And that's what you want to be doing, is, again, increasing that overall lifetime value. So hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully this kind of covered most things to think about. I wish I could give you like, hey, this is a perfect answer for you. But yeah, start to run with this. Start with 1 email a week, then go to 2, and then build up from there. And hopefully once you get into a rhythm and a consistent pattern, it'll be easier and easier as time goes on. So if you have any other questions, let us know. Obviously, we love talking about this. My name is Robbie Fitzwater with Marketing Rhythm, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.